Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. My name is Natalia Moczulska and this is the news. The seaport in Elbląg today gained a direct connection to the Baltic Sea. The construction of the shipping channel through the Vistula spit has been completed. Work on the crossing took less than 3 years. The opening ceremony of the crossing was attended by representatives of the highest state authorities. Our reporter Łukasz Żmuda was at the site. The official opening of the Vistula Spit diversion was attended by some of the most important people in Poland, including Poland's President Andrzej Duda and Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki. It was impossible to enter the Vistula lagoon here without de facto Russian permission. We all know how many problems, difficulties there have been over the decades, very often artificially created, just to prevent this communication, to prevent the proper functioning of Polish centers located on the Vistula lagoon, such as Elbląg. Today, we can see how these investments open up new possibilities, new opportunities for an entire several dozen kilometer stretch of the Polish coast, which was dependent on Russia. We are shedding that dependence today. Great communication projects that have been and are the dream of generations of Poles require vision and courage to realize these visions, require courage to make decisions that have a financial effect. It takes great courage not to ask anyone outside the borders of our country, in the East and West, whether we are allowed to make this investment, because we are a sovereign nation. The Maritime Authority in Gdynia is the investor in this project. In turn, it is supervised by the Ministry of Infrastructure. Thanks to the Vistula Spit crossing, Poland has gained a passage from the Vistula lagoon to the Baltic Sea, independent of Russia. This is another stage in the process of strengthening the security and sovereignty of our country, Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki stressed. The head of government also reminded that the current authorities are doing everything to make Poland independent of energy supplies from Russia. It is no coincidence that the official opening of the Vistula Spit takes place on September 17th, on the 83rd anniversary of the Soviet aggression against Poland. The idea was to symbolically open this path so that you do not have to ask for the consent of a country that is not friendly to us. Of course, this date was chosen for a reason, because it has symbolic significance. Until now, ships that wanted to enter the Baltic Sea had to cross the Piława Strait, which is currently under the control of the Russian Federation. We are a sovereign state and should therefore pursue Polish interests, above all to have certainty of access to our own territory and to be independent of the decisions of low-level officials of a state that, and here we have many reasons to believe so, is a hostile state to Poland. The independence of water transport to Elbląg from the decisions of the Russian authorities is not only the advantage of the Vistula Spit. The connection of Elbląg with the Baltic Sea may bring the city both economic and tourist benefits. This is actually just the beginning, because so far no ship will come to the port. We only have a recrossing and we do not have a prepared port to receive ships. The investment was completed 900 meters before the port itself, so unfortunately, it is still a long way for a ship to be able to enter Elbląg. According to the Deputy Minister of Infrastructure, the investment will be fully completed next year. This is the opening of this first stage because it must be said all the time that this is the first stage, which has just been completed, but it is extremely important. Only next year will we finish the rest of the investment. This investment is going according to plan. The topic of the Vistula Spit recrossing has been raised in public debate for years. In 2006, Jarosław Kaczyński was to speak out loud about the investment. However, after the change of the government, the project did not come to fruition. This canal may have been built a long time ago. I'm not talking about plans from centuries ago because there were ones like that. I am talking about the period of the People's Republic of Poland, but the Soviet Union did not allow it. Today we are meeting in September of 2022, but there was a different September, 13 years ago, when in Sopot, the former prime minister signed an agreement self-limiting the rights of the Republic of Poland to the Vistula lagoon, to these lands de facto. He signed it with Vladimir Putin. So far, the cost of the Vistula Spit amounts to almost $2 billion. From tomorrow, the canal will be open to the public for vessels. The 83rd anniversary of the Soviet aggression against Poland, the entry of Red Army into the eastern borderlands on September 17, 1939, sealed the defeat of a lone fighting Poland. As a result, the Third Reich and the Soviet Union partitioned the Second Republic of Poland, implementing the secret protocol of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Poland was losing the defensive war against the German Third Reich. On September 17th, the Soviet Union unexpectedly attacked from the east. The Poles could not win this war.
2 miliony Polaków.
2 million Poles were murdered, as were some 22,000 Polish officers of the Polish Army, Border Guard Corps troops, Polish police, Polish landowners.
Wojsk Korpusu Ochrony Pogranicza.
Germany under Adolf Hitler pursued anti-Soviet rhetoric. In 1936, they even created the Anti-Comintern Pact to bring together countries hostile to the USSR. This is the reason why in Warsaw, it was not believed that there would be an anti-Polish alliance between Hitler and Stalin. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact included a project to jointly murder Poland by murdering the Polish intelligentsia. In explaining its aggression, the Soviet Union was told that the Red Army was entering the territories of the Republic of Poland to save the Russian, Belarusian, and Ukrainian populations from the Germans. In reality, Stalin wanted revenge for his personal defeat in 1920. I think this was the beginning of this Red Blitzkrieg, because let's note that 1939-1940 were the Baltic states, Finland, and Bessarabia. The Polish authorities did not expect an attack from the east. Commander-in-Chief Marshal Edward Śmigły-Rydz initially wanted to put up armed resistance, but eventually changed that decision, not to fight the Bolsheviks unless in case of an attack from their side or an attempt to disarm the troops. The task of Warsaw and the cities that were to defend themselves against the Germans, unchanged. Cities approached by the Bolsheviks should negotiate with them on the exit of garrisons to Hungary or Romania. The main thing was to evacuate this living population, at least in the direction of Romania or Hungary. Besides, let's note that these troops also broke through to the north, towards Lithuania. Soviet forces that entered the territory of the Second Republic numbered up to 800,000 soldiers. The moment the Soviets entered Polish territory, from all Polish units, all representatives of national minorities fled. Years passed, but the Kremlin's methods still remain the same. Currently, Russian soldiers are committing crimes against the Ukrainian people. 83 years since the criminal Soviet attack on Poland, and 82 years since the Katyn massacre. And we know one thing: Russia has returned to its most gruesome past. On September 22nd, a joint parade of Soviet and German troops took place in Brest, symbolically ending Poland's defensive campaign and sealing the fate of the Second Republic. Representatives of the Polish elite who ended up in Stalinist captivity were murdered with a shot to the back of the head in Katyn, Kharkiv, and Miednoye. The exhumation of the bodies of Ukrainian civilians murdered by the Russians in the forest near Izium is underway. So far, the bodies of more than 500 people have been discovered. Meanwhile, in the face of successes of the Ukrainian counteroffensive, Moscow is again making the threat of using weapons of mass destruction. U.S. President Joe Biden was not indifferent to these words, warning the Kremlin against this move. The exhumation of the graves found at Izium has been underway since yesterday. Researchers are trying to establish the identity and exact causes of death of the murdered. According to our data, there are about 500 bodies in the vicinity of Izium. So far, we have exhumed 40 of them. There are many children. There are bodies with their hands tied behind their backs. Each of these facts will be investigated and will receive a legal assessment. The world must recognize that this is the genocide of the Ukrainian people. Yesterday, Russian President Vladimir Putin took part in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Uzbekistan. During the conference after the meeting, he did not fail to deliver slander and threats against Ukraine. During the conflict, terrorist acts were attempted to cause damage to our civilian infrastructure. So far, we have been rather reserved in our response to them. Russian forces have dealt several critical blows recently. Let's say they were a warning. If the situation continues like this, then the reaction will be more severe. In recent weeks, due to the successes of the Ukrainian army, the threats of the use of nuclear weapons by Russian politicians have intensified. U.S. President Joe Biden was asked what he would say to Putin if he were indeed considering a nuclear attack.
Don't. It will change the face of war, unlike anything since World War II. Of course I'm not going to tell you. It'll be consequential. they'll become more of a pariah in the world than they ever have been. And depending on the extent of what they do, will determine what response would occur.
The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, also referred to the threat of using nuclear weapons.
Я навіть не можу зрозуміти, як
This would be the beginning of the total destruction of the Earth. I cannot even comprehend how special forces, intelligence, and the most powerful minds in the world can even give Russia a chance to ponder this. Honestly, I don't feel that this will happen, but we cannot fully predict anything about a country like Russia. Making an agreement with them out of fear of what they might do is the worst possible option. This would definitely be the beginning of World War III, as it would allow countries like Russia to use or threaten nuclear weapons, to occupy other countries' territories and torture people. There can be no dialogue with those who threaten to use nuclear weapons. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please stay tuned for Poland Daily Weather, Poland Daily Business, and some of our other programs. But for me, it's have a wonderful evening.